So I'd actually read this last Wednesday when it came out. This is House of M #1 by Jonathan Hickman, and this has been the highly anticipated return of Jonathan Hickman to Marvel. Now, he's a person that I'm not familiar with his work at all. I have never read anything he's written prior to this, at least not that I can think of. I'm fairly certain this is the first thing of his I've ever read, but I do know that he is very revered, and a lot of people praise his work and said that this is a good move for Marvel to bring him back because so many writers now, they're in such short supply, not only in Marvel but DC and all of comics, really. So a lot of people were praising Marvel's decision to bring him back for something like this. Now, this is part of a series that will be going, I think, up to 6 issues, I believe. There's one of six of House of M, and also of another story that's going to be running pretty much parallel to it, which is called Power of X, which that comes out this Wednesday, I believe, which I'll also be picking up, and I'll go over it once I get a hold of that. But this is interesting. I'm pretty sure it doesn't take place here in the Marvel 616 universe. It seems to be kind of a story all on its own here that's separated from all that. And what it pretty much is that the X-Men have, or mutants, I should say, are now kind of finding a place for themselves, just kind of separating themselves a little bit from humanity here by inhabiting Krakoa. Now, for those of you that have been longtime X-Men fans or readers will be familiar with the name Krakoa because that was the mutant island, basically the island itself that was literally a mutant. That was the impetus for the, I believe, the new X-Men being formed in the 70s. That's when Wolverine was added to the team, Colossus, Storm, the giant-sized X-Men #1. That was that whole situation because the original X-Men minus Cyclops, because Cyclops was seemingly the only survivor and the other ones were thought to possibly be dead, was because of them going to Krakoa, and then Cyclops and Professor X had to form a new team to try to see if they go find if they were alive and all that stuff. So that was the impetus for all that. And that was the whole big thing with Krakoa, was that it was revealed to be that Krakoa itself was a mutant. So in this, the X-Men are inhabiting Krakoa, and there's these different politicians or diplomats, ambassadors, whatever you would want to call them, from different countries that come to kind of see what's going on, and they kind of they meet up with Magneto, and he tells them more or less what's going on and why they've, I guess, decided to do all this. And what it seems like is Krakoa is like this perfect utopia for these mutants, and they've kind of separated themselves from the rest of humanity and kind of made Krakoa a place of their own, pretty much. And the interesting thing about it also is the fact that since Krakoa is its own, and I don't know if they mentioned this, but I'm pretty sure, I can't remember right now if they mentioned it in this, that the Krakoa is a living being itself. I'm pretty sure that they did, and maybe it's just not, I'm just not remembering right now, but basically, I'm sure that's what I'll come into it. But one of the points that's brought up is the fact that Krakoa is not a part of it's not really a part of any other kind of geographical part of the world. It's its own thing. It's its own, like I said, its own entity. So they just want to be, at least seemingly, the mutants just want to be kind of left in peace and want to be able to just have that place for themselves, their own place. Now, this is something that I saw pretty early on. I thought, hey, that looks like an AIM soldier. What does AIM have to do with all this? And what's interesting is their AIM and a bunch of other organizations, SHIELD, SWORD, and a couple others, Hammer, they are trying to finagle something, right? And what it seems like they're all working on is this right here, which is something else that's also mentioned throughout the course of this book, and that is the Genosian genocide, which I believe is probably a reference to what happened in the early 2000s. I could be wrong about this. Please feel free to correct me in the comment section below. But from what I remember, in the early 2000s, when I was reading Grant Morrison's run of New X-Men, if y'all remember, there was a point, it was part of the, I think, E for Extinction storyline, where basically what happened was that Genosha there was a massacre on Genosha. A bunch of Sentinels went over there and basically eradicated, I think, something like 16 million mutants. So this seems to be something that's kind of playing into all that there. It looks like they're working on another master mold here. And that seems to be what's being referenced here in regards to that, in my opinion, of course. Like I said, unless there was another Genoshan genocide or massacre that I'm just not aware of, I believe that that's what it's referencing. But let me move on here. This is another thing that I found interesting about this story here, right? Is that we get a point where some mutants that we would know to be villains, Sabretooth, Toad, and Mystique, they end up robbing something. They end up stealing something, and they get stopped by the Fantastic Four. And then there's a point where, and I'll skip ahead again because this is one of those things that I found pretty interesting, and there's some other things I want to talk about regarding it. But there's a point where basically Cyclops comes to fetch them, and is like, hey, just remand them to my custody, and we'll take care of it from here, because, there are mutants here, and we'll deal with these guys on particular Sabretooth, because he's the one that gets caught. He's like, we'll deal with Sabretooth. And there's a tense situation here for a little bit between Reed and Cyclops, because he's kind of like, hey, we'll take care of it. Cyclops like, we'll take care of it. We'll take care of Victor Creed there. And Reed's like, well, he broke. He broke a law here. It's like we're the ones that are going to take care of it here. Basically, kind of pulling the whole jurisdiction card here. Like, hey, well, this happened here, so we're going to take care of it here. And Cyclops just kind of willingly, relents. But there's like I said, there's a tense situation here. So what's interesting about all this here, as all this stuff is going on, and you see these things happening, with Cyclops, with the whole idea that Krakoa is just a mutants only kind of place, and Magneto, which is the other thing I wanted to talk about, kind of giving these people, these diplomats, telling them what's going on and what Xavier's plans are, and kind of in a sense, kind of almost making veiled, not so veiled threats to them regarding their compliance, is all interesting stuff, because it makes you think that, okay, are the X-Men, are the mutants the good guys, or are they the bad guys here? They're separating themselves completely from humanity. They don't want humanity to have anything to do with them, and it seems like they're willing to do things themselves that kind of cast them in a little bit of a bad light, right? Like they're willing to force their way into doing certain things. Now, this could be, of course, again, because of all the stuff that they've been through and stuff, and they just want to be left alone, let them be. But it's interesting, because it's almost like they want to create. Well, I won't say that, because it could demonetize the video here because of certain words. But basically, I'll just say that they want to create a certain type of state for themselves that is just, mutant exclusive type of deal. And it's interesting. It's interesting because, again, you don't really know what the full context is just yet, because it's just the first issue. Okay, is it because they're trying, is it because they're bad guys in this? Because that's kind of the sense I got, but at the same time, I think there's more explanation necessary. So maybe in Power of X, which is going to be coming out later this week, it's going to be coming out on Wednesday, like I said, maybe that'll kind of flesh things out a bit more to kind of understand, because traditionally you see names like AIM, and you see also Hydra and things like that, and you think, okay, these are all the bad guys, they're teaming together, but then Shield's on there, former Shield staff on there, and it's just like, okay, what's going on here? Is this a thing where it's the world, which basically would mean like the humans or the ones that are not non-mutants, teaming up against the mutants? What's going on here? What kind of divide do we have going on in this particular world? So interesting stuff. I'm looking forward to reading the next part in this, which would be, and I'll go ahead and kind of skip ahead here a little bit. And that's this right here. There's what I like about this here is there's a reading order for this series, which is not something that's typically done, or wasn't that I can recall typically done back in the day when it came to certain suggested, I guess, reading. Yeah, that's something you would kind of have to piece together back in the day, but it's cool to see that they actually laid out here exactly how the order you should be reading them in. So House of X #1, then Powers of X #1, and then House of X2, and then the 2 issues of Power in between. So I like that it's very specific of which ones you should be reading in what order. So like I said, we'll see what happens moving forward here, what kind of story that Jonathan Hickman is telling here. I think it's good. I don't think it's great. So I'm not going to go off and say, oh man, everybody was absolutely right about Jonathan Hickman. I need just a little bit more. I'm sure he's great, and maybe this is just his style where he kind of sets things up a little bit kind of easygoing, not too fast paced here, but it was good. I thought it was decent, and I would recommend it. So if you haven't checked it out yet, be sure to check out House of X #1 by Jonathan Hickman. All right, until next time, y'all know how it goes. Hunt continues. Please let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, and as always, if you have any suggestions, please also let me know in the comment section. All right, later, y'all.